In this video, I would like to talk to you about a time when gaming felt like something more than just gaming, more than just fun, more than just a way to pass time. It felt like a connection, not just with the characters or the story in the game, but with something bigger, with something watching, with something waiting, something almost alien. There were nights I'd sit there, controller in my hand, feeling like the game was reaching out to me. It was testing me, it was observing me. You're gonna think, what the heck are you talking about? But here's the thing, back then I actually had a prescription for medical cannabis. And I discovered that whenever I used my prescribed dose and then I would game, something rather strange happened. The screen literally became like a window and the game became a world. And it wasn't just the pixels anymore, because every detail sharpened, like the colours bled into my reality and the soundtrack pulsed through me. I could feel the weight of every action in the game and the rhythm of gameplay syncing with my thoughts in a way that felt very much alive. Those moments, they started stretching time and they pulled me in very, very deep into the narrative, where I wasn't playing, I was actually living inside the game universe, connected to its heartbeat. And I would like to talk about this because it was an experience that actually reshaped how I saw gaming and turned every session into something rather profound and quite unforgettable. Just to be clear, this video is actually a personal reflection and I'm sharing it for educational purposes. I'm not stating that you should try any of this, and cannabis is, and I want to be very clear about this, a mind-altering substance. Myself personally, I've chosen to stop using it, and I'll get to that a little later on. Should you ever go down that road, please make sure you do it consciously and make sure that you consult with a medical professional. But let me take you down this rabbit hole, which actually started in 2015 with a game that you probably heard of, which is Just Cause 3. And that was my first real experience gaming with my prescribed use. I remember being at home and launching the game, and then everything changed. The chaos, the physics, the movement, it all felt incredibly vivid. And suddenly I started perceiving all the game dynamics and the mechanics in a way that I've actually never noticed before. And I started really realizing a lot of nuances about the game itself, like things to do with the grappling hook, the explosive mayhem of the game, and the open world freedom. And I was soaring through this world, causing complete madness, and it felt actually very beautiful. Rico Rodriguez was just the protagonist of Just Cause 3, and his world, it just didn't feel like a game anymore. It kind of became my own world, and it started to be a playground where every explosion and stunt felt very personal, like I was shaping that chaos myself, and I actually was. And that game became one of my absolute favorites because of how deeply I could feel it. So after that, I actually moved abroad for work and I didn't have a console, but I used to come back in the winter for about 3 months, which I had off. It was a brilliant time, and I had a routine. I'd take my prescription and dive into gaming for hours. And it wasn't about escaping reality, as you may think. It was actually about immersion. It was about feeling that I was part of the worlds that I was playing in through the video game. And not just playing them. It was my way of connecting with something bigger. And it wasn't just Cause 3, because I was playing games like Destiny 2, Warframe, Red Dead Redemption 2, Metal Gear Solid 5, and seriously, they took it to a totally different level. They weren't just games anymore. They felt, and I know it sounds bizarre, but they felt alive, like I was stepping into something real. Let me tell you about Destiny 2, because this one was a real mind F. And it actually didn't feel like a game at some point anymore. It did feel like I was being watched. not by Bungie, but by something other. So every strike, every raid, every critical decision that I was taking in the game, I remember one evening felt like a test, like I was being assessed for a role, actually for a supernatural task force, which was a defense alliance for Earth, chosen from players. I wasn't just shooting aliens, I was actually interfacing with them, if this is something that in any way or form you can relate to. Some were good, some were dark, and Destiny wasn't a game anymore. It was a portal. And I believed, I know it sounds bonkers, but hear me out, in those moments that the universe was actually watching through my gameplay. And then there was Red Dead Redemption 2, which I absolutely love and loved. And I used to play this with a kind of emotional precision, I'd call it. I used to ride through these incredible landscapes which look so phenomenally immersive, and I felt the weight of every choice. I remember I was thinking whether I should really help someone or walk away, and I wasn't just chasing the missions anymore. I was chasing meaning within the game, and somehow I formed a connection with someone called Mary Beth Gaskill. If you remember her, she's one of the quieter camp members, and I felt like she saw through the world, and maybe even through me, and that hit hard in a way that I never expected from a game. But even crazier was Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, which is one of the only games that actually made me question whether I was still playing or if it was the game playing me. And the opening is this surreal, slow-burning descent into chaos. You're not just watching a story, you're actually trapped inside it. And then, when you think you're finding your footing, the game throws you a very subtle curveball. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but just let's say that it actually messes with the whole concept of identity. And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about missions or objectives. I actually ended up wondering what it meant to be the player at all. It was the first time I felt like a game had initiated me into something deeper. And in that sense, thank you very much, Mr. Kojima. Now, I could go on with more experiences of this kind, but what is interesting is that I am apparently not the only one, because I went and looked into some research on cannabis and gaming, and actually this is still a developing field, but there are a few things that keep showing up, and I find this quite interesting. In fact, people are reporting that they get heightened immersion, enhanced pattern recognition, and that they get this kind of flow state that makes the games feel more alive, and this is what I can absolutely relate to. But on the flip side, and this is also something I can relate to, it can also make you hypersensitive to stimulation and more reactive. It basically just makes you more impulsive if you want, and sometimes even more anxious. And research shows that there is both benefits, like the fact that things can feel more immersive, but there is also risks, like for example anxiety. So this highlights that there is actually a big need for caution. It is like turning the emotional dial up for better or for worse. And when I look back, I realise how much the prescribed use shaped my experiences, and it made the games feel like portals, but it also did blur the line between the game and reality, and that's why I decided to stop using it. Not because it is inherently bad or I didn't have any pressure from the outside, but because I just wanted, and that is ultimately very important for me, to be fully present. And if it was doing this much to how I actually experienced games, imagine what it was doing to how I experienced life. And it took me a little bit of time to realize this. For some, it might unlock something very interesting. For others, it might actually create distance from what matters. And by the way, I'm not here to judge or to preach. I am just here to share my story, so you do you. So as I said, for me, I just decided to stop, and I'm very happy with that choice. But if we go back to this whole metaphysical angle, there's one thing that I keep circling back to, And I sometimes wonder, what if there is more to this? And I caught myself wondering, what if the games or the way we interface with them actually tap into something deeper? So a kind of quantum feedback loop, a resonance between what we bring to the screen and what the screen gives back to us. I know that it sounds like late night philosophical talk, but just hear me out, because I've started to wonder whether games themselves might hold something more. So not just as personal effect, but as a universal possibility. So not just as code, but as fields that we step into, conscious kind of systems, mirrors, if that makes sense. But maybe that is a story for a different video. But let me come full circle here, because this whole experience is actually one reason I got into handheld gaming, and it has been a game changer for me, because I realised that thanks to a handheld, I can dive into immersion very instantly anywhere, just me, the screen, and a world that pulls me in without any setup or any delay. And thanks to handhelds like the Steam Deck, the Switch 2 or the MSI Claw, I can do that absolutely wonderfully and just out of my pocket. And for me, immersion, as you might have heard a few times if you follow the channel, has always been the point, not just getting distracted or having quick fun, but that feeling of actually being part of something bigger, of stepping into a world. And now, even without cannabis, I've mastered new ways to chase that feeling in a much clearer, sharper and more controlled way, proving and I'm happy about that for myself, I don't need anything but just the right device and a great game. So I'm happy I could actually share that with you, the fact that gaming used to feel like alien contact. That's something I haven't told practically to anyone. And maybe it was the games, maybe it was my prescribed use, or maybe it was both. But now I'm actually happy I'm exploring those worlds with a clear mind. And you know what? They're actually still just as alive, because I've traded the haze for a handheld. And honestly, I'm having a blast rediscovering all of that, though I still sometimes glance over my shoulder, half expecting that alien to nod approval. And let me tell you that if you ever had a gaming experience that felt like more than a game, and if you can relate to this whole story, I'm happy for you to let me know down in the comments. And if you're curious about handheld gaming or how I'm chasing immersion now, well, stick around, because I've got more stories to share. In any case, thank you very much for watching, and if you found this reflection helpful, interesting or funny, well, feel free to hit the like button and do subscribe if you want to see more. I'll be gone now, off to do some sports, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna see you in the next world.